So does this free energy tech, and I want to touch on a few things. Well, actually, first of all, I'd like to
Yes.
agree with you that I also thought it very strange when Tom DeLonge suddenly appeared in the mainstream media and is now being hailed, as the UFO researcher of the year, of the year, is being given awards, and people are suddenly emailing me asking about him, and I said, look, I agree. There's a lot of fear
Yeah, but I don't
mongering.
think he's conscious. Here's how slick the intelligence community is. They will recruit someone like him to reach millennials or X generation folks who is being used. I think Tom is. I mean, Tom has stayed here at my home. I know him very well. I think he's being used by the intelligence community. That has happened over and over again. There are many people that I have introduced to this subject that they then see there's an opportunity to provide disinformation to the public through them, and they start getting fed disinformation. Now, people say, well, how are you not being fed disinformation? I said, well, it's been tried, but I have very good methods and sources. So, for example, when Richard Doty talks about the U.S. government staging abductions.
I was just about
People
to
say,
ask
well,
you
that was
about
just,
him.
yeah. They just said, oh, he's the only one who said that. I said, no, he's not. He's the only one willing to go on camera saying it. So when I put out something, if you see someone on camera in my book, there are probably 10 or 20 people that don't know each other who have corroborated the same data point, who have corroborated the same information. And that's what I try to stick with. I try to stick with highly corroborated information. And you really have to be careful when you're dealing with the intelligence community, military, because you never know when someone's a Trojan horse trying to bring in false information. So the only way I can do that is to fact check it, number one. I mean, God gave us a brain. We can use it, right? And number two, we have to have multiple points of corroboration. So if if I have multiple points of corroboration who from different decades over different careers tell me exactly the same thing, that the intelligence community and unacknowledged projects have been doing things such as mutilations and abductions and staging things because to create fear factor, like the movie Independence Day. So eventually we'll end up in World War III that'll be interplanetary. If I heard it from one person, I'd say, well, that's bull. If I hear it from 10 people that are independent and don't know each other and are not colluding with each other, I go, there's something here. And then I'll drill down on it. So keep in mind that in the Disclosure Project, we have maybe 100 people on the record, but I have probably at this point more than 1,000 sources in the CIA and Pentagon and different corporations who've given me information over the years. But those other people don't want to go on camera because they're afraid or they don't want the public attention. So what we're left with is sort of a tip of an iceberg. Now, out of those 100 or so witnesses that are military and intelligence and corporate, the book and the movie is only like the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg. So the big challenge for this movie, for the director and for me, was saying, where do we make the cut? Because we have in my archive, I have thousands of pages of transcripts of these sort of people, thousands of pages of government documents. After I met with the CIA director, I got box loads of documents on this. This is where some of the documents that you see I got. Now, some of them aren't that I've gotten are from sources inside the agency or inside the National Security Agency or some other three-letter agency like the National Reconnaissance Office that aren't declassified. And people say, well, if they're not declassified, it's illegal for you to put them out. I said, no, it's not. And here's why. Anyone listening right now, if you have been or are in a project connecting to this subject, you can come to me and we can put your information out and you cannot be prosecuted. And the reason you can't be prosecuted is that I can prove in a court of law, and I have one of the biggest legal teams in the world that defend our constitutional freedoms who came to the premiere of Unacknowledged, who was offered to help us. It's a huge group that deals with constitutional freedoms. And we can prove in a court of law that these projects are illegal. And because the projects are illegal, they can enforce the National Security Act against whistleblowers. So anyone listening, any who has a document, an object, part of an ET craft, a testimony, you're free to speak with impunity. And the proof of it is that all these military people who've spoken on the record, none of them have been harassed. Not any of them. Not a single one.
That's surprising.
No. Yeah. Well, they can't. Because if that happened, I told them, you report that to me, and we're going to go after whoever does it, like you can't believe. Whoever does that is going to be in more trouble than you can imagine. I said, make my day and hit me with a legal case, because then we'll make a real public disclosure of it, because subpoenas are then going to go from my legal team to the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the CIA director I briefed and the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency and members of the Senate Intelligence Committee, all of whom I've met with personally and all of whom have been lied to. And so that would prove the illegality, the unconstitutionality of these covert programs.
Right.
And at that point, exposed. So they don't want to create a legal case, trust me. So this is why I tell people, I said, make my day. I hate to sound like Clint Eastwood, but, make my day and bring a legal case against me or one of my witnesses, and you're going to see what happens. Well, because we're standing on very firm legal ground.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people are wondering, and I've been asked this by viewers, is how is it that Dr. Greer is he's still breathing right now with everything that he has, all the information he knows. It's obvious, and your new film, devastatingly proves that the alien phenomenon is real. What would you say to the viewers out there who are new to this topic would be the best, I guess your favorite case, or maybe the best single piece of evidence that you can think of that proves that this phenomenon is real? And what would you say to them about deciphering the fear-mongering and the disinformation out there? What are steps they can take to find out the real truth, as you have?
Well, I think there's no one single case. There's so many excellent ones that stand out. In terms of scientific evidence and corroboration, perhaps one of the very best cases would be the Japan Airlines case that's in the movie and more extensively in the book, where a Japanese 747 flying the polar route encountered one of these massive objects that was several times the size of a 747, and the pilot signaled to it and it signaled back, and then it started moving. It was like the shape of a walnut with lights going around it. Massive, massive object. And I think this was in 1986 or something like that, during the Reagan years. And the main investigator at the FAA, the third highest ranking person at the FAA, became a whistleblower. And people don't realize that not only did he provide testimony, but we got the report from the pilots, we got the radar, we got the original digital radar tapes. The CIA thought they confiscated them. This man, when he retired, had retained the originals in his office, took them with him, and I now have them. So this is dispositive proof of the object and of the witnesses on the ground at radar stations, in the air with onboard radar, and a high government official confirming it, and confirming how the cover-up happened, where there was a meeting and there were 3 people from the CIA, 3 from the FBI, and 3 from Ronald Reagan's Scientific Advisory Committee, who came to a meeting at the head of the FAA's office where this man presented all the evidence. And they were told, we're confiscating all this evidence. You are never to speak of this again. And this meeting never happened.